All pizza styles explained. 8 different styles. Pizza might look simple, but around the world it comes in completely different forms, from floppy wood-fired classics to deep, cheesy pies that barely even look like pizza. These 8 famous pizza styles each have their own story, flavor, and personality, and some of them are way crazier than you expect. 1. Neapolitan pizza, the original pizza. Neapolitan pizza is where the whole pizza story really begins. It came from Naples, Italy, and even today, a lot of people still see it as the purest form of pizza ever made. What makes it special is how simple it is. There are no crazy toppings or overloaded cheese pulls here. You usually get fresh tomato sauce, mozzarella cheese, basil leaves, olive oil, and soft handmade dough. That's it. But somehow, those few ingredients create a flavor that feels completely different from most modern pizzas. The first thing people notice is the crust. The middle stays thin, soft, and slightly floppy, while the edges puff up during cooking and get little black char marks from the wood-fired oven. Since the oven is insanely hot, the pizza cooks in around 90 seconds. That quick cooking gives the dough a smoky flavor and a light texture that feels airy instead of heavy. Eating Neapolitan pizza also feels different. You are not really grabbing giant crispy slices and walking around with them. A lot of people actually use a fork and knife because the center is so soft. Some people fold it gently, while others just tear pieces apart. Either way, it feels more like eating fresh, handmade food instead of fast food. The biggest reason people fall in love with this style is balance. Nothing overpowers anything else. The sauce tastes fresh, the basil stands out, and the mozzarella feels creamy instead of greasy. It is one of those pizzas that seems simple at first, but once you try a real one, you understand why this style survived for generations without needing to change much at all. 2. New York-style pizza, the foldable slice. New York-style pizza took the idea of Neapolitan pizza and turned it into something bigger, faster, and built for city life. When Italian immigrants arrived in New York, they adapted pizza to fit American tastes and ingredients. The result became one of the most famous pizza styles on the planet. The first thing you notice is the size. The slices are huge. Sometimes one slice feels bigger than an entire personal pizza somewhere else. The crust is thin but strong enough to hold all the cheese and toppings without falling apart completely. Most people fold the slice in half before eating it, which is honestly part of the whole experience. Walking around New York with a folded pizza slice almost feels like a movie scene. Compared to Neapolitan pizza, this version is crispier and cheesier. Instead of fresh mozzarella, it usually uses low-moisture mozzarella that melts into that classic stretchy pizza cheese everyone recognizes instantly. The crust gets crispy on the bottom, but still stays chewy inside, which gives every bite a really satisfying texture. Another reason people love New York pizza is its simplicity. A plain cheese slice can already taste amazing. Pepperoni is probably the most iconic topping, but even then, the pizza never feels too complicated. It is fast, greasy in the best way possible, and built for grabbing on the go. That is why it became such a huge part of American food culture. It is not fancy, but it delivers exactly what people want every single time. 3. Chicago deep dish, pizza as a pie. Chicago deep dish pizza does not even look like normal pizza when you first see it. It looks more like a giant pie packed with melted cheese and sauce. Everything about it feels bigger, heavier, and more intense compared to thin crust styles. The pizza is baked in a deep, round pan with tall edges, which allows it to hold massive layers of ingredients. The crust itself is thick and buttery, almost like pastry dough in some places. Then comes the interesting part. The toppings go in reverse order. Cheese sits directly on the dough first, then meats or vegetables, and finally, the tomato sauce gets spread across the top. Because the pizza is so deep, every slice feels huge and filling. You are not casually eating 3 or 4 slices of this unless you are seriously hungry. Most people use a fork and knife because picking it up with your hands can become a complete disaster. The cheese stretches forever, the sauce spills everywhere, and the slice feels heavy enough to count as an entire meal. What makes Chicago deep dish interesting is how dramatic it feels. Everything is overloaded in the best possible way. The tomato sauce tastes rich, the cheese layer feels endless, and the crust stays sturdy enough to hold everything together. Some pizza fans absolutely love it, while others argue it is barely pizza anymore. Either way, nobody forgets their first deep dish experience because it is completely different from almost every other style out there. 4. Sicilian pizza, thick and square. Sicilian pizza instantly stands out because of its shape. Instead of being round, it is usually baked as a big square or rectangle inside a tray. The crust is much thicker than traditional pizza, but it stays soft and fluffy inside while the bottom becomes crispy from olive oil coating the pan. One of the best things about Sicilian pizza is the texture. Every bite feels airy and chewy without becoming too heavy. The crust almost reminds some people of focaccia bread because it has that same soft interior. At the same time, the crispy bottom adds a nice crunch that keeps the pizza from feeling too soft. The sauce usually plays a bigger role here too. Sicilian pizza often has a bold tomato flavor that stands out more than the cheese. Some traditional versions even place the cheese underneath the sauce to stop the crust from getting soggy while baking. That little difference completely changes the flavor balance compared to most pizzas people are used to eating. 5. Detroit-style pizza, crispy cheese edges. Detroit-style pizza has become one of the fastest-growing pizza styles in America, and once you see it, you immediately understand why people get obsessed with it. It looks different from regular pizza right away, because it comes in a rectangular shape instead of a circle. But the real magic happens around the edges. This pizza is baked inside deep steel pans, which were originally used in Detroit auto factories decades ago. The dough rises into a thick, airy crust that feels soft inside, but develops an incredible crunch underneath. Then comes the cheese. Instead of stopping before the edges like most pizzas, the cheese is pushed all the way to the sides of the pan. While baking, it melts against the hot metal and turns into crispy, caramelized cheese crust. That crunchy, cheesy edge is basically the signature of Detroit pizza. 6. California-style pizza, creative and modern. California-style pizza feels like the complete opposite of traditional pizza rules. Instead of focusing on old-school simplicity, this style became famous for creativity and unusual toppings. It really exploded during the 1980s when chefs in California started experimenting with ingredients people normally never imagined putting on pizza. The kind of pizza where you might see barbecue chicken, goat cheese, avocado, arugula, smoked salmon, truffle oil, or even fruit. At first, some combinations sound strange, but somehow they work together surprisingly well. California pizza treats the pizza almost like an art project where chefs can try anything they want. The crust is usually thin and crispy, but the toppings are the real focus. Everything feels fresher and lighter compared to heavy American pizza styles. A lot of versions use organic vegetables, fresh herbs, and fancy cheeses instead of giant piles of meat and grease. Even the presentation often looks cleaner and more colorful. 7. Greek pizza, oily, chewy, and rich. Greek pizza is one of those styles many people have eaten without even realizing it has its own identity. It became popular mostly through Greek-owned pizzerias across the northeastern United States, and it developed a flavor and texture completely separate from Italian pizza styles. The biggest difference starts with the pan. Greek pizza is baked in heavily oiled pans, which gives the crust a rich texture and crispy golden bottom. The dough itself is thicker than New York pizza, but not as deep as Chicago style. It lands somewhere right in the middle. The inside stays chewy while the outside gets crunchy from all the oil. The sauce usually has a stronger flavor too. Oregano plays a huge role, so the pizza often smells incredibly herby the second it comes out of the oven. The cheese blend can also vary more than other styles. Instead of using only mozzarella, some versions mix in cheddar or provolone for a sharper flavor. 8. St. Louis-style pizza, ultra-thin and crunchy. St. Louis-style pizza might be one of the most unique pizza styles in America because it completely ignores the idea that pizza crust should be soft and chewy. This pizza is incredibly thin and crispy, almost like a giant cracker with toppings on it. Unlike most pizza doughs, St. Louis-style crust is often made without yeast. That keeps the dough flat while baking and creates that signature crunch people either instantly love or need time getting used to. When you bite into it, there's no softness in the crust at all. It snaps loudly with every bite. Another thing that makes this pizza different is the cheese. Traditional St. Louis pizza uses Provel cheese, which is a processed blend of cheddar, Swiss, and provolone. It melts into a creamy texture that tastes very different from mozzarella. Some people absolutely love its smoky flavor, while others find it unusual the first time they try it.